Hey, everybody, welcome to the fifth episode of Taps and Patience. My name is AJ Huff with Design the Everything, and I'm here with my co host, Harrison from Precision Ingenuity.
Good evening.
Hey,
How we
man,
doing this? How we doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. How was your week? What'd you do this week?
Oh man. So was it last week that I was telling you that it was going to be the week of like craziness? Was that
That
last
sounded
week?
right to me, yeah.
Yep. So I guess I could give an update on that. So my week, I had design work. I had a rush order that got rushed twice. So they had it was over 300 parts, and they wanted 120 of them rushed. And then they called me on Friday afternoon and wanted four more parts rushed before Monday morning. And so that completely messed up my week and at least my Friday. Not my week, but my Friday. And excuse me. Um, we had six guns that they wanted to have the barrels threaded on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very stressful because anytime you're dealing uh, with a new process, it's stressful in its own. But when you're doing a process like barrel threading on other people's guns, then
Yep.
your biggest fears are that you're gonna have to buy a whole new gun for someone. So we were really worried about that. And there's good news and bad news on that front. So we spent 2 days working on the first two guns, and we got one of the guns done. Um, for those of you who haven't ever taken a barrel off of what they call the action, these were bolt action rifles. Um, we had to get this vise that bolted down to a table, and then an action wrench, which had about a 2 foot, 2.5 foot, a foot of leverage on it. And basically, the table vise had four bolts that we basically had to impact down to the point where you're clamping on it so hard that you feel like you're going to snap the barrel in half.
Wow.
And then you got to put an action wrench on the action, and then it's out about 3 foot, and then you get another 2 foot cheater bar on that, and then you put a bunch of weight on it, and you feel like you're about to snap it, and then you hit it with a hammer because it's under so much tension, and we only got one out of the six guns broke free, to give you an idea of
Wow.
how crazy that was. And thankfully, for four out of the six, we figured out that we could do it without separating the barrel from the action, which I guess in doing a little more research, apparently almost no one takes the action off the barrel if they can
Hmm.
help it, which makes total sense. And so we figured out how to disassemble the gun to the point where we had to take stuff off the action, which was much easier than taking the action off the barrel.
Yeah.
So like the trigger assembly, the bolts, and some of that all those other components, basically getting it down to the raw action without any of its external components. It's basically a round cylinder at that point for most of these rifles, and so you might get a little bit of wobble in the lathe. So we 3D printed some spacers to go over the action and kind of support it inside our center bore of our lathe, and that kept the vibrations down. And so to kind of simplify, 2 days for the first one, then I got two done in one day, and then I got three done in one morning. So
Okay.
so my
Learning
my
curve there.
time is greatly decreasing, and five out of the six turned out great. Now the sixth one, that one we had to ship off to the manufacturer because we broke stuff.
Uh-oh.
And that one's going to be, so it was a an AR-10. So the five out of the six were bolt action rifles of various brands. The sixth was a AR-10. It was a 6.5 Creedmoor, and it had a bull barrel on it. And there's a nut that locks the barrel to the action.
Okay.
And this particular brand was a River Rock brand. I was on the phone with them so much that I almost had them on speed dial at the end of the week. But they sell a special tool to go onto the barrel nut. And it's got these 6 fingers that kind of grab onto the barrel nut. It's a very funky design. But I'm on the phone with the techs, and most of the guys say add heat to break down any of the locking compound that's in the barrel in the action, because they use a lot of red Loctite or stuff or something similar to that in those. But River Rock said that they put anti-seize, and they do not recommend heating it up because they only torque theirs down really lightly. So they claim. So we had it sitting, we soaked it in PB Blaster for 3 days straight, just soaking it constantly. We bought their special tool. We worked on it multiple days in a row, and I kept calling them to make sure that I was doing everything right. And then on Friday, we were trying to get all the guns done before the weekend, and it was the last gun that we had to work on. We got it stuck in the vise. We got their tool on it. It's got 6 fingers that are on it, and I got a 2-foot bar with another 1.5 cheater, and I'm giving it the beans. And we got it locked down in a vise on the action, and it ends up shearing 2 of the 6 pins like clean through. Just snaps them off at the base.
On the tool or on the part?
On the tool.
Okay.
So it's got these they're probably 3/16 hardened pins, 6 of them. And
is it like a castle nut or
kind of? Yeah, it's kind of like a half nut that grabs onto this thing. I don't have any photos of it, but I'll have to see if I can find some photos of it. But anyways, so it sheared off the two of those hardened pins, but because it sheared 2 of those hardened pins off, all of the force went back to the other 4 that are still on it, and those ripped the nut that it the way it grabs onto it just ripped them out of the nut itself and just bent everything over. And so we were sick to our stomach as soon as it happened. Oh man, there just goes everything. And so we start calling around and talking to different people, trying to figure out what to do. And we ended up shipping it off to the manufacturer. But there's another local gun shop that's probably 10 minutes north of us. And he's been in the business a whole lot longer than we have. And so we went there today to drop off and pick up some stuff. And we were telling him our story with this particular gun, and he's like, oh no, those things are they should be super easy and whatnot. And he goes and grabs the tools to show us, and it's a different tool than what we were using, but I mean, it wouldn't have helped in this scenario. It was only for holding on to the action. And we get done telling him our story, and he finally registers what we're saying about how tight that nut was on. He's like, oh dude, that is a manufacturer problem. If I've ever heard one. He's like, I have never heard of one being on there that tight. And my biggest fear was that it was like a left-handed thread.
I was about to ask about that.
But I called multiple times on the phone with River Rock, and I was like, righty tighty, lefty loosey, right? This is what we're all speaking the same language here. And I called up the person who had brought us the gun and told him our story, and he wasn't upset. He says, stuff happens. Just send it off to the manufacturer. So we'll see. Hopefully that bill does not hurt too much, but
so you don't know how much it's going to be yet.
Mm-mm. And what's annoying is that one of the techs that we talked to said it should be covered under warranty. But when we called customer service, because we damaged it when we were trying to take it off, it's no longer covered. So I don't know. We're going to see how this plays out, but it's was a very stressful, frustrating deal all the way around. And then in combination with that, we had like I said, we had a 300 part order that came in, and then they wanted to rush 120 parts. And so that happened on Friday of 2 weeks ago. So not this last Friday, but the Friday before is when the order came in. And then they wanted 100 parts by Tuesday morning. And so Monday was spent running around like a chicken with his head cut off trying to get that done. Um, and we got the rush order done, but they still have 200 parts that we need to get done by Wednesday of this week, Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Okay.
So hopefully it won't be too bad. But we did get one more tool in our tool belt that I'm super excited for, and it just came in today. And that is a part puller.
Oh.
For the lathe. So we're going to try to...
A part puller or a bar puller?
A part puller. So it goes in the turret. It goes in the turret of the lathe, and it'll go and grab onto the material and advance it forward. So we don't have a part pull or a bar feeder, because those are crazy amounts of money. But this one, sub $1,000 part puller, it can grab onto the material and advance it out. So we can load a bar up and let it run for 30 minutes to an hour or more, depending on the parts, fully automated. So that's what I was working on this afternoon. Was I got to write some custom programming, because that's actually a feature that Fusion does not support.
Really?
I don't know if you didn't.
Huh.
They have the ability to come in with a sub spindle, grab it, and pull it forward, but they don't have the ability to use something that's on the actual turret to go down, grab it, and advance it.
Interesting.
So there's some people that have come up with some hacks to modify the post processor to do it, but you lose that sub spindle functionality when you do that, because they're using the sub spindle feature, and they're overriding it and changing the code on your post processor to allow it to work with your part puller, and you still have to do some funky stuff. And so I'm just
I'm sorry, go on. I was just thinking.
Oh, I'm just going to be writing some manual code and just passing it through. Some manual G code. That's how I'm handling it right now. But eventually I'd love to see, and the looping as well. That's another thing that Fusion doesn't really have that I've been able to see, is like, how do you get it to loop through 10 parts and program that in there? Or however many your bar can handle, and then stop whenever it gets to that point.
Yeah. So what I was thinking, and I guess it would depend. You could do it as a pass-through NC. That's easy. Just putting the manual code in there. You could potentially also steal one of the other manual NC commands. There's a list of like 10 of them, and they're like pause, option stop, comment. I don't remember. There's like 10 of them. Open door. Oh, yeah. You could treat it like an auto door. And just copy paste that code and put it, like, set it up so the post processor puts it in at the call for the auto door.
Yeah.
And just lie to Fusion.
Here's the problem that I see. And this is why they did it with the sub spindle. It's because you have to move the part puller to your cutoff length, grab onto it, and then move it to your start length, and then let go of it. And with the auto door, it's just flipping a switch on or off. I don't think it's actually passing through any distance commands, which is what you would need to go to your cutoff length and move it to your start length.
So you'd have to put those in on the post parameters menu. Like when you post, there's like, you can add custom parameters in. So you just have like, how far you want it to pull forwards or whatever parameters you need there.
Now, instead of overriding the auto door option, can you add another drop down item in that manual NC?
I don't know.
That list? Because if you could add to that list and then build out several parameters on there, I could see that being extremely beneficial.
Yeah. I know there are ways that you can actually add a whole new tab to different toolpaths, where you can set custom options. Like the big one is you can add a custom tab to, let's say your 3D adaptive or whatever, or better yet, a parallel toolpath. And you can have a drop-down menu to choose your machine's smoothing setting. So if you want it to be on, what do they call, like exact stop versus, I don't know.
Gotcha.
My controller doesn't do this, so I don't know the terminology, but I think anything more than a Tormach would do it.
Yeah. The compensation, like left-right compensation, is that what you're talking about?
No, there are M codes for how to change how your machine handles points. And do you want it to hit every point exactly, sacrificing like the smoothness of the toolpath and
okay,
and speed, or do you want it to be able to round corners some?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
So normally the only way you could do that is by a pass-through NC, but you can actually change your post or your machine configuration, one of the two. I haven't actually done this. I'm just talking about what I've seen other people do. So you can add a additional tab inside the toolpath menu where you can put in those parameters.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I've wondered that sometimes because I know that there are some powerful toolpaths where you're not telling it every single point, but you're telling it to a start point, end point, and a radius, and the machine calculates it for you, and instead of having to tell it every single point you want it to hit. And I've wondered how Fusion handles some of those things. So
Fusion will output arcs. If it's a circle, it'll do a circular toolpath. But there's the fusion points, and then there's how your machine is trying to hit those points.
Oh, okay.
And some machines like to have a billion points, very tightly spaced. I think Heidenhain is notorious for liking points. And then some machines, like let's say our Tormachs, they like to have as few points as possible.
Yeah, because they can't process it fast enough.
Yes, and I see that jitteriness in my parts sometimes, or in the toolpaths at least.
I've definitely had some adaptives where it's doing really tiny circles trying to adapt through a small area, and it just slows way down, and like the simulation time versus the machine time like are way off from each other just because it can't process it fast enough.
Yep.
So yeah. Which, do you know off the top of your head, or know someone who might know, how many blocks of code the Tormach can actually process in a second?
I do not. That's a good question.
Because there is a setting for your processor in Fusion to say how many points it can process, and it affects and it affects how fast it thinks. I believe, at least I've seen it in a setting somewhere, and I believe it'll affect like your simulation time, because it knows that like if you're doing like a bunch of really tight points that are really close together, that it can't process that code that fast. It'll add time based off of how long it takes you to actually process that code.
Foot Pedal Jones on Instagram would know. He's the Tormach Whisperer.
Yeah.
If anybody knows, it's him.
That'd be an interesting question to ask. And that'd be an interesting question to see if that actually makes your simulation time more accurate. Because in heavy adaptive programs with a lot of tiny features that the tool has to work around, I've noticed major amounts of time versus simulation versus real being vastly different.
You don't think it's just machine acceleration, though, do you?
It could be. It could be. And one thing I haven't tried, thinking about it now, is changing my tolerance to be bigger. That way I'm producing less points, or turning on smoothing and having smoothing be a larger value, and seeing if that actually allows it to produce less points and make it go any faster.
It would definitely give you nicer toolpaths, especially on adaptives, where you're not too concerned about accuracy.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good point. I should try that. See if that makes a difference.
Yeah. I know on mine, there in the simulation or the machine configuration or something, there is a slider that's just like changes the like it's just a multiplier on the fusion time estimation. And I know mine, I had to set it to 105% or something like that to get my times closer. And you just basically do that on a normal-ish tool path, and time it in reality versus on the simulation, and Kentucky windage it. That's worked fine for me.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about me. How's your Kickstarter and some of your other stuff coming on?
Changing so the Kickstarter broke 20K today, so that was cool.
Ooh, I haven't looked today.
Last I saw it was just over 20K, which is
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
That was like I don't want to say my wildest dream number, but I did not see that as realistic when I was first thinking about this campaign. So I'm super happy with that. I'm actually, so this is something we should talk about, is should I limit my sales if it keeps growing? Should I put a cap on my sales?
For those of you listening to our podcast, he's currently at 20,269 with 321 backers and 10 days remaining. That's awesome. By the way, that is super awesome. So should you limit?
Should I cap it at like $30,000 or like 1,000 carabiners? Not that I think I'll hit those, but
well, I guess we need to nail down the reason for the limitation. Is the limitation because you have a certain amount of time you want to get them out in? Is it to try to drive up post Kickstarter sales for those who missed out, even though the Kickstarter might be still going, but hey, it's ending early because I've hit some artificial limit that I'm setting. What would be the driving force on your end or your desired outcome because of limitation?
So I have two thought processes. The first thought process is that I want to always undersell, over deliver. So yes, I would have plenty of time to get, even if I did $40,000 in sales, I would still have plenty of time to get those out based on what I said on the Kickstarter. But I would also like to beat those times considerably. That's always my goal. My other thought is if I spend the next 4 months machining carabiners, I'm not using that same time to keep developing new things, and it just kind of slows the whole tempo of the business and lets people kind of forget about me. And then there's longer to my next Kickstarter, which isn't as good for cash flow.
Okay. So let me ask you two questions. First, if there is a limitation and you are trying to reach the 20,000 mark on future Kickstarters, do you need to increase the dollar value of your items to and have lower quantities going forward if this is going to become a reoccurring problem? Or do you need to see if you can find someone to either help you produce them or look at getting an additional machine? That way you can have one for prototyping and one for production.
So the outsourcing question is another good thought, because theoretically I could just have all of these laser cut. It would probably double or triple my costs, but then, I'm just sending them out to somebody else, and, when they get back, I'll throw them in the tumbler. But that doesn't, the problem I have with that is a large portion of the people who are buying these are buying them because I'm the one making them, and they know me, and they've seen my YouTube videos, and they've seen my process, and, they want to support me, not just some other random company.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that is one of the things that in my head is part of my value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that transfers into reality, but in my head, that's part of it.
Well, if people are there because you're making them, then breaking down your sales numbers, how much of them are coming from you versus how much of them are coming through Kickstarter and sales? Do you have those numbers?
Some of this attribution gets a little bit difficult. Kickstarter has it broken down into 40 different categories of where these have came from.
That can be confusing.
Yeah, so let's see. 16% came from Kickstarter's homepage. 15% came from direct traffic, which means that like they either clicked on an ad or like a link in my YouTube page or on my Instagram. Let's see. Another 11% came from advanced discovery, which I believe is Kickstarter's recommendation engine. So we're about 25% is recommended. 9% came from Instagram. 7% came from search, which means that either they typed in carabiner and happened to find me, or they typed in not for climbing, like they were looking specifically for me. 5% came from Core 77, which was that website that did a blog about us. 4% came from, 7% came from email signups. And then after that, we're down to 3% or less for each. But
okay. So
I said a lot of stats there. I'm not sure I processed much of that.
Yeah.
Maybe about 50% came from me and 50% came from other sources.
Yeah. And that'd be a fair estimate. I would say I would probably look at, if I was in your shoes, I would probably look at something like a Tormach, what's it called? They're smaller, the 440, as like a prototype machine. Or I would look at the Tormach router as a production machine.
That is an interesting thought. I couldn't do flood coolant on it, though, for titanium.
Mm-hmm. You could do mist, couldn't you?
Yeah, it'd be really messy, though.
True. So that router is something that I've always been interested as like a production, as a small high volume simple part beast.
Especially now that they have a tool changer.
Mm-hmm.
Though you add on the tool changer and it's almost like adding or buying another MX.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, there's also that I thought about making my own router table specifically for machining. And I was looking at that Avid CNC and getting like a 3-horse 18,000 RPM spindle with an automatic tool changer built in, and building it up from there, and starting out with like a 2 foot by 2 foot and then growing it over time.
Yeah. I don't want to buy another machine right now because I have one in mind for the middle of next year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I don't want to spend all my capital to get this one product done at the expense of, future products.
Yeah. The one thing that I would say to at least shed a little more light on it is that when you increase your ability to produce things, you can usually decrease your price and increase your volume to offset it.
That's true.
So, but it just depends on how low you want to go, and does the numbers make sense and pencil out? But
hi, Ruth. Hold on, I'm on a podcast, okay? What are you doing? Yeah. And there's something to be said for changing the way I'm making things in the future. Though I don't know, doing these carabiners will be fine. Like it's not like I won't be, making money. I just have a lot of them to make, and like.
Mm-hmm. So have you? I know we kind of talked a little bit offline about um, kind of the quantities and the time. Have you given any more thought to that you'd want to share? Or
Yeah, so I've spent today or a couple hours today doing some like time studies. And basically I in terms of machine time with my current design, I am at 8 minutes and 40 seconds per carabiner.
okay, that's not bad.
I was going to do some design revisions to them, and I spent a couple days like trying to prototype those and get to something that I liked, and I could not get something that I liked without completely changing the design to the point where it's really not the same carabiner.
Okay,
So I'm just nixing those design changes and basically just starting to kind of optimize my feeds and speeds a little bit. And I went from about I think it was about 10 minutes down to 8 minutes and 40 seconds, something like
that's
that.
awesome. Hey, that's a good savings.
And then everybody likes to tell me about how slow my UV curing fixturing is. And so I tested that. And I just have a 2-part fixture right now to
Mm-hmm.
remove both parts and then clean it out, put the new parts in, and get the resin around them, but not including curing time. I'm at about 45 seconds for the two.
Really, you can pop them out and cure them that fast. That's
So
actually
that does not include the curing time. That is to where I have the lamp on them. But
oh
all of
okay,
that will be offline anyway
okay.
because I'll have 2 pallets that I'll rotate through.
Oh yeah, as long as you got two pallets that you can rotate through, then the time to switch over really becomes negligible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole idea behind the Pearson pallet system is you can have as complicated of a fixturing system as you want. Just make sure that you can change them out fast, and then who cares how long it takes you to set them up online or offline, or sorry, how long it
Well,
takes them to set up when you're offline and your other parts are running. When you have one pallet in the machine, one pallet not.
I would like to be able to go do other things, so I do kind of care about how long it takes.
Well, yeah, but spindle wise, it's not as big of an issue as long as
Yes,
your machine's
spindle
running.
wise. Um, the the UV method seems to be working pretty well. I haven't had any parts failures, though. Every now and then, I will go to like blow the coolant off of the part, and the part will just pop up with the compressed air. Which, I mean, it hasn't caused an issue during machining yet, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's got to eventually. Like it's
Yeah,
still not secure enough in there, just because the
yeah.
resin's not sticky.
Mm-hmm. Have you
So
thought about sandblasting your resin points?
I should try that. I did some like I undercut some grooves in there with like a little burr on a Dremel,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped a lot. But I just need like 25% more grip.
Yeah, I think sandblasting those your little pockets that you're putting the resin in would make a big difference, at least to give you that additional 25% you're looking for.
Yeah, I'll try that. One of the reasons I haven't is when I machined this fixture, I didn't give myself any sort of reference location, and I didn't machine any of the edges. So like
Oh
as soon as I
no.
take it out of the vise, like it's no longer a fixture anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, Not that it's not $1.50 of aluminum and 20 minutes of the machine time to make another one, but
Now, what is your palette system that you're using for this?
I am switching to the Saunders Machine Works pallets.
Okay.
So it's like a round and a diamond pin and 4 socket head cap screws.
Okay. So are you're bolting them down to the table and you're switching them in and out?
Yes.
How many can you fit on the table at a time?
At this point, TBD, to be determined.
To be determined.
I have not designed those fixtures yet because I'm still prototyping my pockets, and that's what I'm
Gotcha.
doing right now. Is making sure my fixturing method works, making sure that I don't want to make changes. That way, I'm not scrapping a pallet or two just to test this
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what your final pallet density is and uh, final clamping method is. We got into a little bit of that with our card cases. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to use it much because all the card cases we made it so far have not really been selling. So, but that's a whole nother interesting topic about designing a product and mass production and making sure you have a customer base before you overproduce. But at the same time, like if you don't have those products ready when your customers are ready, it's unless you're doing something like Kickstarter, uh, it's hard to get them out there, I think, and get good feedback.
Have you done any paid Etsy ads yet? Like
we've started to do some of those. Yeah, we've started to. And we have honestly, like our Etsy page is growing and we're getting more and more sales every week. It's, and in fact, we had our first Deck Defender sale here recently, but all the rest, we got, here's part of the other problem is we have half of them up on there, but we got half of them that haven't made it up there yet because we haven't had time to get photos and get the links and everything posted for the other colors that we have in stock currently. So
one of the things that has been on my list for like a week or two now is to take all of the things that I'm selling on Etsy and send them to the guy who did my product photography for the Kickstarter. He is going to like redo all of my Etsy listings from, the ground up. Because like that's one of my biggest bottlenecks is I make products and then I don't get them listed anywhere for sale. Like the new pry bar I have, I could be selling those on Etsy. So I'm just going to start outsourcing that to Adam because one, he's better at it, and two, I kind of hate that part, and I never get around to it.
Fair enough. Well, here I got an interesting question for you. Speaking of my Deck Defenders here a little bit. You got one of them a while back.
I did. I do. So I use it every day for storing SD cards.
What are your thoughts on it as a product, and in terms of something that people would want versus pricing? And do you think my issue is finding the right customers and getting our name out there, or is it a pricing issue?
I mean, to some extent, all products always have both issues.
Yes.
Because if you can sell those for $3, then yeah, everybody would want them just because they're cool.
Yeah, that's true.
But then obviously you're not making money on them. But to the right audience, maybe it's you could sell them for $200, but you're only going to find a couple people, and you're probably going to spend $1,000 trying to market to those people. I mean, I'm not the right audience for them. Like I said, I'm using mine to store SD cards because, like, I don't have fancy decks of cards, and I'm not carrying them with me. I don't think your price is incorrect for the people who do care. I do not think that. I think you'd have a hard. I don't think you could sell them cheap enough to market it to people who don't care.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So
the average crowd that are looking for the Amazon card protector for $5 out of plastic, and then they have an option for metal, and they might pay an extra $2 for metal, but they're not going to pay the extra $60 that we want.
Yeah. Or the people who don't even go looking for a card protector, or like don't even know they exist. Like you're never going to sell to those people. So yes, I think you need to find a way to reach the people who care. And that's probably, I would say, going to be in person.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about casinos or like Gen Con.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I've definitely noticed that anytime I tell anyone about it versus when I stick it in their hands, completely different reaction. When I tell people about it, they go, "Oh, that's kind of cool." When I stick it in someone's hand, they go, "Oh man, I want one." And then at that point, it's just figuring out if they want it bad enough for how much I'm asking for it. And so, I don't know. Challenging.
And maybe you should. at some point you have to sit down and go, okay, yes, this could be a product for somebody to sell, but maybe I'm not that person.
Yeah. And I definitely think that we're not pushing it as hard as we once were, just because, for a couple of reasons. One, we've kind of moved on to other things, so we're not really as interested in it as we once were. Yeah. Two, it's kind of hard to find the right people to market to in our area. Uh-huh. And three, we've just learned so much more since then, and would want to keep doing new and exciting things. So it might just be a thing where we just have to sell these off for less money, maybe even lose some money, and just move on to the next thing.
I would say consider that. I mean, sometimes things sell, sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they sell really well for a while and then they just stop.
Yeah. Products and things is a funny thing. Although I do notice that when people find stuff that works, and if they do it well, that's usually all it takes. Like Saunders, I don't think is trying to come up with new products as much as me or you, because they have a whole product line, and they might come up with stuff that is around their product line, but they're not trying to come up with like the next, Tormach competitor machine, or the next oiler system, or vacuum system for chips, or chip management control systems. Like that's just not their business model. That's not the business they're in. They found a niche that they can do well in. And it's more of expanding that niche to more machines at this point, rather than creating a new niche or finding a new niche.
Yeah. Though they have been talking about their 0-point system, which I'm super excited to see.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you heard about that? It's been mentioned in passing in like a couple podcasts and videos. Yeah, there's a Saunders Machine Works 0-point system on the way.
That would be cool. But see, that still kind of goes along the work holding route that they're kind of focused on. So,
yeah, exactly. You have to specialize.
Yeah.
And like let's see, this was before we're doing a podcast, but like I broke up like Design the Everything into several smaller companies that I've been kind of been doing a bad job of working with, or at least making that clear to people, because I'm still doing everything under the Design the Everything name. But like technically the company that I'm working on right now, or the brand of Design the Everything, is the Better Keychains brand. And I stopped working on everything else in the background so that I could exclusively focus on the Better Keychain stuff. And sure enough, as soon as I've started focusing, like that's when things have started going pretty well for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it's something that I've said for a long time. It's really hard for us to focus in on one thing these days. We're so ADD and have so much little stuff going on here and there.
It's so easy to do. But yeah, right now I'm focused on just the Better Keychains portion of Design the Everything. Basically, my goal is to do that until I can get to my first hire and pass off Better Keychains to them, and then I can go work on the new sub brand of Design the Everything.
Mm-hmm. And what's the Design the Everything going to focus on?
So the way I have it broken up is I have Better Keychains, I have Parametric Products, and I have Design the Everything, and then I have Design the Everything Manufacturing.
Okay.
And so this is long-term goal here, is like my overall strategy is there's these little satellite companies, Design the Everything, Better Keychains, Parametric Products, that basically run as independent teams, and then they use Design the Everything Manufacturing like as almost like a third-party manufacturing company.
Gotcha.
So that's my theory.
That's a cool idea.
So talk to me in 20 years and I'll tell you how it went.
Well, you got to be able to adapt and change over time. So just how these things go.
Yeah.
But it's exciting. Changing topics again slightly. Do you have much experience with PVD coatings?
I have zero experience with PVD. Do you mean on a product or on a tool?
On a product slash modifying products. So
Okay.
PVD coatings are very popular in firearms, pistols, and things of that nature specifically, where they'll have their whole slides PVD coated. And so I just found a local gun shop who recommended us a PVD coater to try
Interesting.
out. And so he had a little color swatch of all the different colors. And it never registered to me, but I saw a couple coatings that are the exact same coatings that are on tools. And it just
Yes.
never registered. It just never registered in my brain until I had that little swash of colors. I was looking through. And I'm like, wait a second, these are like tool coatings as well, and it just never registered in my brain until I was looking through them.
Yeah,
I'm
that's how you
sure
get
I've
the
heard it at
coatings
some point.
on the
Yeah,
tools.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But I would love to test them out on some like gun slides and stuff because it looks really cool on some of that stuff.
I one of one of my things with products is I want them to look and feel the same for basically forever. And
Mm-hmm.
especially on something that goes on a keychain that's basically impossible unless you just stonewash it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a PVD coating is one of those things that might be able to stand up to, the
The
test of
test of time.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually really interesting. Though I think it's really expensive.
It's not, according
It's
to this
not?
guy. He said
Ooh.
this particular company that he was using. I don't know all the details, but he said something to the effect of you pay for a tray to get dipped, and everything you can fit into that tray basically
Uh,
kind of gets distributed for the cost. So in your case, if you were doing 100 keychains filling up a tray, it'd probably be pretty cheap to do.
that that is something I'll have to look into.
So.
Um, Maybe for like the orange slices,
Mm-hmm.
those would probably be pretty easy to do, or even the carabiners. Man, it would be cool to have a PVD carabiner.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll let you know how it goes, and I'll even share the company with you if it works
Okay.
out well.
Yeah, please.
But yeah, we're we're also in kind of in this point now where we're also trying to figure out. We started doing the slide milling stuff, and not very many people. There's some interest in it, and people want to do it, but they're not breaking down our door trying to get us to do slide machining. And so we might be pivoting and buying guns, doing slide work on them, and then selling them as completed guns. Because as one of
Okay.
the guys brought up to me, he said, a lot of guys will not spend $200 to $300 on a gun that they've bought for $400, but they'll buy that gun with the work done for $600-700 and not think twice.
Yeah.
And so you can basically get the same amount of money out of the work. You're just selling a completed gun instead of selling the service to the gun. And so at the end of the day, you're making the same amount. It's just how you're presenting it to the customer as an add-on or as like a fully ready to go gun.
With the downside being that you have a um not a negative cash flow business, but like you're spending the money up front and then, maybe not getting rewarded later.
Exactly. That's
Um
the big downside to it.
yeah.
So, and that's what we got to figure out. We might play around with it and make a couple and see how well they sell. And we've thought if we do that, that we might try to do like themed guns around in like an
Uh-huh.
idea.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
I think if you're selling it as a complete themed gun, it'll do a lot better than if you're just doing the slide work. So
definitely.
So
though then you have to worry about, like, can you, well, okay, I guess it depends on your theme. If you're doing like this is a Vietnam War commemoration pistol, like, then I guess it doesn't matter on your timeliness of your theme. But if you're trying to hit hot topics, quickly, then you have to worry about, can I get this done and sold before that hot topic is no longer hot?
Yeah, yeah. And you can do cheeky things like a pumpkin spice Glock. That's like a seasonal
Yeah.
thing that you could do in in the fall, or there's
I don't know if that's
also
a great idea or a terrible one.
I've seen some versions of it that I think are hilarious, and I think a pumpkin spice Glock would just be, there would be people that would buy it. I know there is. And I know I've seen like Stormtrooper Glocks and Deadpool Glocks. I mean, there's some stuff that just, I think, is just going to sell.
I am all for like crazy ideas that grab attention. Like, I think I talked about this at some point. It's like, inside the, like, design the everything, develop a process, or develop a product process. Like, now it's like the second or third thing on the list is like, figure out something that'll make it stand out. Like, figure out something that's shareable about that product and build that in from the very beginning. And I mean, you could definitely do that, though. Like, I don't know, it takes some guts to do a fairly crazy gun like that. Like,
yeah, we got to figure that out.
By definition, some people will love it and some people will hate it, and that's how you know you're hitting the right spot.
Oh yeah, no, two of the coolest Glocks that I've ever seen, and both of them I think have had their issues since. But one of them was the Lego Glock, and they called it the Block 19 instead of the Glock 19, and they actually got sued by Lego because they had real Lego parts that were like glued onto it, so you could actually put Legos on it
onto it.
So, and I think they ended up getting sued by Lego, and they were going to sell it, and they can't now. And then the other one that was really cool was the Mystery Machine as a Glock, like from Scooby Doo. That one I mean, with the purples and the greens, it looked just like the Mystery Machine van from Scooby Doo. It was really cool. So there's definitely some really fun stuff you can do, but machining wise, I'm not as much worried as I am graphically, like painting, Cerakote wise. Our skills in that, I would love to get to the point where we were doing enough Cerakote work that I could hire a skilled painter to take on that kind of stuff full time.
Yeah, well, let's see. You could do stencils and stuff that kind of take away some of the painting skill and make up for it in Illustrator or Inkscape or whatever.
Yeah, and we thought about that. You could get like a Cricut or something and cut out all your own stencils, which we might end up doing at some point. But we're still kind of in the very early stages of trying to figure out this whole themed gun thing and see how well that goes.
I would say choose the next gun that you want, and try it out with the understand. Like, make it something that you want, just so that if it goes wrong, then like you got to expense out your next gun. That's what I would do. Because then you get like, if someone buys it, you sell it, you buy, you have a proof of concept. If nobody buys it, then you just made yourself a super cool, showpiece or whatever.
I might have to do like a Halo themed Glock pistol. Then I've always been a big Halo fan. I've always enjoyed their franchise, at least the Bungie era. For those of you who are gamers out there, I've never been a big fan of the 343 aesthetics. But anyways, no, that could be fun. I could try to come up with some themed guns that I would like. There's a lot of really cool ones out there. I have to think about that. We got some Stormtrooper white paint that I really want to put on a Glock as well. So like a Stormtrooper themed one, I think would be really cool. Or what's another themed thing that would be really good white? Like a Moby Dick Glock. That could be fun.
That would be cool.
Or like a Jaws, or like a Spitfire. Spitfire Glock cool. would be really cool as well. Or a P-51. I've always loved the Corsair. That's probably one of my favorite World War II planes. That would be a pretty cool one to pay homage. They just don't have as cool paint jobs as the Spitfire is kind of an iconic paint job that stands out really good.
Yeah,
Corsair's more plain, pun intended.
Yeah. Would you? So let's say, okay, suddenly you start selling these things like hotcakes. Would you narrow down the type, like would you have a theme to your themes, or would you try to keep it loose? Like, would you like?
I think for us, as long as I have an interest in it, I can go as deep down the rabbit hole of a single idea as possible. Mm-hmm. And I haven't really had a product that has like hit and registered well, and like has like a ton of sales. So I think I would want to ride that wave as long as possible for the experience and to see how much I enjoy it, and see if I get tired of it.
Yeah.
And so it'd be something that I would want to, even if I wanted to move on to more stuff, I'd want to keep going with it and just learn as much as I can. But I'm definitely going to be going wherever I'm having the most fun, long term, more than following any trends. I think, like, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, I have a hard time doing it. Like, I used to really, really like design, but now that I've taken on some more design work, I've realized I don't like designing for other people as much as I like designing my own stuff.
Yep.
So, like, this design work that I'm doing, while I am enjoying it and it is good, it is also stressful and not nearly as much fun as whenever I'm trying to come up with my own product and I don't have someone looking over my shoulder telling me what they want, versus letting me kind of make my own decisions and build it the way that I think is the best way to do it. So
yeah. Though also there's something to be said for, again, so let's go back to the themed guns case here as an example. So, okay, you start selling those, you're making stuff that you want, suddenly you're selling, 10 a week. So you bring on somebody to help you. At that point, you need guidance for them, assuming you're hiring the person who's designing them, I suppose. And like, they're never going to be as interested in you. So like, you need guidelines, you need a theme.
That's true.
If they become, even if you're just doing it yourself, they become your bread and butter, and then you get bored of them. But at some point, like, it's just business, and like, it's another job you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you need guidelines to keep going. To stay consistent.
Yeah, and I guess that's true. When you hire an employee on, I mean, if you think back to all the jobs that you've ever had, the owner has a lot more stake in the company than any employee probably ever will, and and is a lot more invested into the business as a whole. Versus an employee, if I gave him a job and I said, "Hey, I'm hiring you on to make the same gun, and I need the X amount every week for as long as you're here," that's not that I would ever want to wish that on anyone, but at some point, if you're hiring an employee to complete a task and they're happy to complete that task as long as possible. I mean, it's kind of the same as having an employee who's sitting in on an assembly line making snack cakes or chicken or any of this other stuff. You know, they're doing basically the same thing day in, day out for years on end. So yep. There's definitely people that you hire on that can do that kind of stuff that would probably drive me up a wall, but that's why I started my own thing in the first place. So
yeah.
Yeah, if it made sense, I would definitely be willing to hire some people on, and I would love to hire people on that are more creative. But see, I like developing people as well. I like teaching people and pushing them to grow, and so as long as an employee that I had was learning and developing and growing over time, I would be happy to keep them where they're at. But I would eventually want to change up for their sake as well. But I mean, it might make sense at the business point at that point too. You got to pivot as a business. You can't make the same thing indefinitely and not grow and progress.
Okay, yeah, you need to grow and progress. You can make the same thing indefinitely. I mean, look at McDonald's. McDonald's basically makes the same thing indefinitely. They make hamburgers. They make different variations using the same 13 ingredients or whatever.
True. But they also rotate through employees a lot more than, you know. So, I mean, they have a lot of shops and they have a lot of employees, but I don't think they have a whole lot of people that are retiring after 40 years of service flipping burgers.
Yeah. But that's because it's also a crappy environment. But
yeah. But that's the point I'm trying to get away from is I don't want to have a crappy. I want to have employees that want to. I want to become that one of those places that people want to work at and have enjoyment working for. And I'm sure this is what every employer or most employers want is they want to be able to pay their employees good wages and have an enjoyable environment. I don't know. Maybe I'm optimistic, but I feel like that's how most people would want their businesses to run. Although, that being said, I have heard from business owners in the past that they like if you don't have enough turnover, you're not pushing your employees hard enough. I have heard that said by businesses around here, and I do not agree with that philosophy.
Yes, I'm sure there's people that say that, and there's probably places where that works, like fast food where the turnover is already super fast anyway. Mm-hmm. That would never be my company, or at least I would not intentionally. I mean, like that would never be my intention.
No.
You don't want to just burn people out and pass them on. Like
no. Which is why, have you ever watched any of the Jay Pearson videos where he has on his, like the orientation videos that he posted a little while ago?
Yes, I think I've seen all of them.
Yeah, those were, he is, everything that he says in his videos, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to. And I think it's a very good attitude to have towards your employees. And one thing that I like about it, I don't know how much you remember about it, but he said something along the lines of, you're not probably going to work here forever, and that's okay. As much as I'd like to have you work here forever, you're going to probably grow and move and things change and, you aren't going to be here. But I want you to leave here better than how you came. I want you to be more skilled, think about stuff better. Like, I want to educate you. That way, when you go to your next job and they hear you're from Pearson Work Holding, they're going to go, oh, you worked at there? Okay, you have the job no matter what, just because we know the types of employees that he hires and that he develops. And, that's the kind of, like, I want to have that kind of reputation where even my ex-employees, if they worked for me, then they're going to be fantastic just because of how much I invest into my employees, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you there. Here's a question for you. So let's say, I don't know, tomorrow, a salesman comes over and he says, I've got this robot. This robot will replace, one person. It'll do, this task and this task. It'll do it all day. There won't be any problems, yada, yada, yada. You can rent it from me for $60,000 a year. they'll maintain it, they'll program it, everything. Basically, it's like replacing a person. And then, that same day, you have somebody that walks in and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. I'll work for $60,000 a year." Would you rather that high productivity robot, or would you rather that person? Like, assuming they're one for one doing the same things, would you hire a person or a robot?
Depends on the thing they're doing. If it's anything that involves creativity, then I'm going to hire the person. If it's any task that's a mundane task, then I'm going to go for that robot. In general, I think I want to have a highly automated workforce to augment the people that I hire. That way I can afford to pay them good wages. And if I was to hire someone today or get a robot today, I would probably try to go the robot route first, just to learn and figure out how to automate some of the tasks that we're doing. Although the easier route might be to hire someone. So, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm on board with you. I would say basically the same thing. Like, if I could choose, and again, I don't know how any of this is going to work out, but, if I could design a company, and let's say this can just magically happen over, 20 years, whatever, I would much rather have 10 people working for me who are doing, who are each getting paid, 2-3 times industry average, but then they are operating using a high level of high productivity machines and automation, versus having 100 people working for me using low productivity machines and methods, and they're making, industry average or below industry average. I would much rather aim for the high productivity, highly paid employees than, mass.
Yeah. And I think industry is going to move that way over time. It's kind of like, it used to be that you would have one machine and one machinist, and they were pretty much at a 1-to-1 ratio. But with the way technology is going today, you can have, one machinist can run 3 machines, 4 machines, sometimes more. And sometimes these machines can run for hours unattended at times where they don't need anyone, or days. I mean,
look at Danny Rudolph.
No, Danny Rudolph?
Yeah, do you know Danny Rudolph?
Not off the top of my head.
So he's the guy that's got, like, I don't even know his count anymore. It's like 20 or 25 Swisses shoved in basically a large garage, and he runs them himself with, I think, a little bit of help from 1 or 2 family members in like deburring and inspection and stuff. But he's running a ludicrous amount of machines himself. But really? He's making very small parts on, citizen Swiss lathes that are just production machines. Like,
yeah, I think he did a podcast, and sorry, I got a text message in the middle of that, and I have a hard time focusing on multiple things at the same time. But did he do a podcast on Within Tolerance recently?
Yes, he did. Okay. I don't know about recently, but at some point, yeah.
Okay, because I think I remember them talking about having the Citizen machine and pumping out all those parts. Does he does YouTube videos as well, or no?
He does not. He's on Instagram.
Okay, I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, I think it's just Danny Rudolph is his name.
Yeah, because those Swiss machines can produce so many parts. They're like impressive. Now, I did see a machine recently that I didn't even know existed. Have you heard of a coil lathe?
A coil lathe? No. I kind of understand what it is just by the words coil and lathe. But that's fascinating.
So the coil does not move. It unwinds into, and so you can only go up to about a 1/2 inch diameter, or maybe an inch at most. Okay.
That'd be a pretty big stiff coil.
Yeah. And you load up a coil of material and it unwinds, and it'll straighten it out as it's going into it. And your tool turret rotates around your part.
Interesting.
So your part stays stationary because it's got this
Yeah.
massive coil at the end, and your tools rotate around the part and are feeding in and feeding out while it's rotating.
Huh.
And so I ran across them on YouTube here recently, and they were just mind-boggling. And they can hold so much material, and they're producing such small parts that they can run for 2 weeks unattended.
Wow.
Producing parts. So
Yeah.
like highly specialized, highly productive, extremely low maintenance or like needing of personnel to watch over them. So
I suspect they are not particularly low maintenance, but
well,
like the old Acme machines, the
yeah,
like multi-spindle thingies.
but I mean, it was a crazy like process for producing insane amounts of parts and just letting it run lights out for like weeks on end, basically.
Yeah, that is crazy. It's like the stamping presses that get fed by coils of sheet metal. Like,
yeah, was it? I think there was a Saunders shop that he toured a while back where they produced over 1 billion parts a year.
Yeah,
something
Superior.
like that.
That's where like we first heard from Adam Duluth. Is that his last name?
Maybe.
Who's both on the Instant Machinist Discord and then also recently started a YouTube channel that you'd probably really like.
I'm always looking for good YouTube channels.
He does like high precision grinding kind of stuff, and he's had some really cool like tip style videos lately. I believe on YouTube he's probably under Adam the Machinist, which is also his Instagram. And he's a super great guy too. But he's someone who wants to stay a one-man show. And he's basically just putting like he's not so he is somebody who wants to stay a one-man show, but instead of doing high productivity machines, he is doing specialized stuff. So he has he does a lot of hard milling, a lot of like milling of carbide, grinding, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, if you can specialize, you can usually find your own little niche where you don't have to compete with everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do it as a one-man band.
Yeah. The hard part is finding those niches. And for me, I haven't been out in the world long enough to make those kinds of connections or even know what kind of niches are needed. So that's definitely something that as a job shop, I'm really struggling with. So, but I think I'll grow with time and capabilities. Our name is starting to get out there a lot more. I've had, in the last month, I've had like over 10 walk-ins, which is...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. Just people that have heard about us from other people and they just kind of walk in like, hey, can you do this? Sure. Uh-huh. Like I had one today. I had a guy who I'd never met who called me up and he's like, hey, I have this part. Can I bring it by? And I'm like, sure. And then he showed up 10 minutes later and now we're going to try to make him some parts. So
nice.
We're definitely getting a lot more foot traffic, which is exciting because at least it shows that our name is getting out there and everyone that we've done work for has walked away happy and is telling more people about us. So if I can keep that process up, I think at least just by word of mouth, I'm going to reach people that I couldn't reach if I tried to advertise to get them.
Yep. That's how you grow. I've never seen a job shop that has grown via, conventional advertising and conventional marketing. Everyone that I've heard talk has always been word of mouth.
Yeah.
I guess maybe with the exception of Xometry if they count, but
yeah.
They had a big budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would, I've thought about this as well. Like Xometry has had there's a lot of people who used to really like Xometry who now I'm kind of gathering don't as much as they used to. So I've always wondered if you were to redo Xometry from the ground up, how would you do it? And I've thought about it, and as an end user, if I was to switch from Xometry to another company that was competing, I would make it a lot easier for them to put in what equipment they have, and
Okay.
so that you're sending them stuff that they can do. So you're kind of funneling work to people based off of what their capabilities are better. And then I'd also like to, if I was to do a Xometry type business, I would like to, people who have good scores, I would like to try to reward them once every X time period with a job that's like a gravy job that I know they can do, to just be like, hey, look, this is a give me job. It's something simple, something that, because I have a sneaking suspicion that there is a lot of gravy jobs that come onto Xometry that I never see. There's no way that there is not jobs out there where you're making 100 simple bushings for a decent price, or 1,000 or more for a good price, or even in terms of specializing, instead of trying to do a catch-all. Like Xometry is kind of like a catch-all for everything. Like, what if you made a company that said, hey, we want your simple parts, your average parts, and we'll give you good pricing on it. And then, you form a website that's like focused around the simpler stuff, but, higher volume stuff where you can specialize it to your partners' needs, and then make sure that you keep them happy with, a couple bones every so often, to try to make sure that, like, hey, this is a job that everyone would want, but we're giving you first dibs because, you've been with us for a while or whatever. So,
yeah, I think Xometry has some inherent issues to it where, because basically Xometry is playing the role of middleman, where they are trying to make money by connecting, manufacturer and the person wanting the parts. The problem is, it's not an industry that's used to middleman. It's an industry where the manufacturer is used to going, the customer is used to going directly to the shop.
mm-hmm.
And so most customers are still able to do that. And so they know how much things cost, and the shops themselves are used to going directly to the customers, and they're used to being able to charge what they're used to being able to charge.
Mm-hmm.
But now both the shop is unhappy because they're paying, like Xometry is taking some of their profits, and then the people who are ordering the parts are unhappy because everything's more expensive.
Yeah.
And so Xometry kind of by definition has to screw both sides of the party. And you could argue that if people are buying parts on Xometry, it's because they see it as worth it. And so the prices are either competitive, or the headache of not dealing with the company directly is worth it to them, or they don't have the know-how to go talk to a company directly.
Yeah.
But they're still standing in the middle, taking profits.
Yeah, and the problem that I see is that, they put these prices up on there, and most of the time the prices just barely cover material.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back and forth, and if it's a good job, usually there's someone on the network that'll just grab it, even if it's making next to nothing. And if it's a bad job, then you have to go back and forth, trying to get the price up to a point where you're willing to do it. And
So
so
this is how I would fix Xometry. I would say, okay, Xometry is no longer a job matching company. They are a tooling and supplies company, and I think they've started going down this route. I would say, okay, Xometry is no longer going to take a cut of the job, or just a very small portion. But you must buy your materials from Xometry, or just Xometry will automatically send you the materials as soon as you accept the job.
Yeah.
And then same thing with tooling is, if you buy tooling for a job, you have to buy it from Xometry. And your packaging, and they could sell you everything and then not take a cut of the profits, and that keeps your shops happy because they don't need to like they're making parts at a reasonable profit margin, and they'd be paying someone for the material and stuff anyway, so it might as well be Xometry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true.
Kind of like how McDonald's makes most of its money from not retail. What's the term? Real estate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting business plans out there for stuff like that. And you know, it's interesting. The first one that's on the scene is usually not the one who survives. And if I don't know if Xometry is the first one onto the scene, but they're definitely the biggest one currently. So it'd be interesting to see if any other, and I've already started to see other businesses kind of do similar stuff to Xometry. There's definitely some that are popping up. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over time and how the landscape changes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this Kickstarter has convinced me that I will not be going down the Xometry route at all. It's still kind of tempting to be able to just like go pick up a job, when I'm bored on a Tuesday or whatever. But now that I have, I guess I can't call it a reliable stream of income, but I have proven that this works at least once.
Yes.
And so I might as well invest in repeating it instead of trying to go to other things.
And it'll be interesting as you continue to do it if your advertising stuff continues to perform better and better over time. That's something that I'm also extremely interested in.
Well, and one of the things I'm looking forward to, one of the things I think I'll have going for me in the future is, so this was a relatively low priced item, the Carabiner, which means that to get to my $20,000, I have sold it to many, many people. And like on Kickstarter, the lifetime value of a loyal customer is pretty high. And so, I have 300 people right now that have backed this, which means when I launch my next thing, I can go directly to those 300 people. And, even if half of them back, like that's a huge step up from where I was before.
Yeah, true. True. Good point. Yeah.
Let's see. Did I have anything else on my list? Oh, I just had one thing that I missed for this week. My Prusa Mini got here.
Oh, what'd you think of it?
It just showed up today. It's still in a box. I'm selling off my other two 3D printers, and I'm just replacing it with the Prusa Mini.
Oh, okay. That'll be fun.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. You have to let me know how it goes. I've heard mostly positive stuff about it. So
I haven't heard anything negative about the Prusa Minis.
I've heard people who they don't have anything negative necessarily. They just have concerns, and they're concerns that I definitely can agree with to some extent. And the main thing was with the offset head, how is it going to hold up over time? Because it's only got rails on the one side. I don't know if that's a valid criticism or not. I mean, I kind of go both ways on it. I think it's probably going to be fine for what it is, but now
I've never heard a complaint from anyone who has actually used one.
Yeah,
and the frog pod guy, he's making like 1,000 frog pods on his, and he just bought like 4 of them.
Really?
Yeah, they're all printed on Prusa Minis.
How's his stuff coming? Coming pretty good.
He's fulfilling. I think he's basically like printing faster than he can get magnets right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he has custom ordered magnets.
That's cool.
So they seem to be going fine. I got mine. I backed, and I just got my 2 frog pods.
That's cool. Yeah, I've always liked the idea of mass producing 3D stuff. It's kind of a hands off process once you get it all set up and going. And to be fair, we've actually sold year to date probably close to over $10,000 worth of 3D printed products. So
gosh, that's pretty good.
So
what's selling that's 3D printed?
So we have a guy who he does these Desklons that are 3D printed. And they're just a 3D printed box with a lid, that he has a YouTube channel and he has a bunch of followers, and he was doing a wooden box in the past, but he had untreated wood and kept having all these issues with it, and he wanted to 3D print it, and he's right down the street from me, and I've known him for a long time, and it came up that he was trying to 3D print something, and I was like, well, I have a 3D printer. I can make them for you if you want. And because he had found a guy on Reddit that was in like Florida to make him one, and he just, wasn't sure if he wanted to buy a printer or do all this. So anyways, we've been doing fulfillment for him for over a year now, and it's actually, it's done well enough to pay for both our printers and then some. So, and it's mostly passive. We just keep them in stock. And oh yeah, your pen.
Yeah, this one is actually one of the, like, I think first prototypes we did. It's two different materials because we ordered different samples to figure out what material we liked. For those listening to audio, this is my 3D printed pen, though it's 304 stainless, if I remember right. Or no, it's 420 stainless. 3D printed from Shapeways. This one doesn't work. It doesn't close. And you can just kind of extend the tip and unextend the tip a little bit. But I got thinking about 3D printed products again, like out of a metal process. Because when I was at IMTS, I talked to a company called N-Topology. They make fancy design software isn't really the right word. They make software that can modify CAD models and do really cool things with them. They basically started off like trying to do better 3D printer infills. So like, you got like the fancy gyroid patterns and the hex patterns and all that. And then they just kind of kept running with it. So you can like take a normal product, let's say a carabiner is a bad example. Okay, a knife. So let's say you can take a knife scale. You could just like click on the face of the inside of your knife scale, and with like 2 button presses, put an ISO grid in it.
Oh, that's cool.
Just very quickly and very easily, and they can do like adaptive grids based on the forces, and all kinds of different meshes and stuff. And I would love to incorporate some of that stuff into my products. The problem is that software is in the realm of like buy a new CNC machine in terms of cost.
Yeah, that's always hard.
Yeah. So you can't really justify that.
I haven't looked at it in a long time, but has metal 3D printing come down at all in price? Because I feel like it's pretty high, at least historically.
I'm sure it has, but I think we've gone from like $1 million machines to like maybe $200,000 machines.
Yeah, but for like Shapeways, like as like if you were to, I remember like we had some engineers when I was in school who had a senior design project where they were working on a it was a 4-link what do they call, bar derailleur, I think is what they call it, the gear changer on like a mountain bike. It was a 4-bar link derailleur, and they had all 3D printed off of Shapeways, and it's like $1,000 or more to have all these tiny little parts 3D printed. And
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't that much material. It was like, and it was all out of aluminum, so it just seemed like a ton of money for how small everything was. But for their prototyping, it was fine. But it seemed like when I heard the pricing on it, and that was back in 2016, 17. So, I mean, I don't know how, I'm trying to remember when 3D printing really started taking off, in metal 3D printing, I should say, as like a service. But I think it was still on the earlier-ish days of that for like Shapeways.
If I remember right, each half of this was like, I think in the neighborhood of like $15 each, maybe like $17. So
okay,
$30,
so that's a lot cheaper.
I think, total in printing.
It's a lot cheaper. And when did you do that?
2015, 2016, somewhere in there.
Oh, really?
Same ballpark time. But remember, this is a hollow tube.
That's true. Their parts were, if you had all of the parts, you could probably hold them in your hand.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the complexity of it made it hard, because do those weld to the build plate? I wonder if there was like some cleanup post-processing stuff that they had to do.
Yes, those. This is one of the problems with metal 3D printing. By definition, they weld themselves to the build plate, and then you wire EDM them off of the build plate.
Yeah, so that could have been the issue for those particular parts, because they were all pretty complex.
Yeah,
small parts. So, but
I would consider, instead of going more of a million route, instead of buying a, what would be an example, like a UMC 500 or whatever, buying a metal 3D printer.
Yeah.
Especially if I want to go more down the parametric product route and the like algorithmically generated stuff, like that is just so much quicker and easier with 3D printing.
I'm gonna have to look at Shapeways again after this, because
I'm curious
what the pricing is.
I should now upload my carabiner just to see what the price is on something like that.
Yeah, because I'm extremely curious now as to what the pricing's at these days. Because there's definitely some products that I'm working on right now that if I 3D printed them could be pretty cool if it was cost effective.
Yeah.
And
out
I
of
could
metal,
do
you mean?
Yeah, out of metal, because like there's some like skeletonized gun stands that if I 3D printed, I think could look really sick and be very unique to what's on the market right now.
Yeah, you could even do what's it called? The like AI generated stuff in Fusion.
Well, there was a company. I need to find my email because I think I got into the beta testing, but it was AI engineering design. It was a company that was coming up with this way to design structural. It's kind of like the Fusion 360 adaptive generation or whatever.
Yeah, generative design. That's the word I was looking for.
Generative design. But it was more technical. Like you could have it do generative design, but it was like you could come up with I want to say toolpaths, but like features, like generative features that you could build into your design that I think you could like have a little more engineering control over how they generated than just generate something at a random.
Have you ever actually done generative design in Fusion?
No, they took it out before, like they made it a paid thing before I got Fusion.
It's like a whole thing. Like there's a lot of like, you can just kind of like put a couple constraints in and hit go. But like you can spend a lot of time getting it set up right to do exactly what you want.
Yeah. And right now we're on the entry level Fusion, like the entrepreneurial package or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when we get to the point where we're starting to pay for it, I'm gonna definitely look into some of those other add-ons and see if
they should give you. Don't you have like 100 credits that you can use to experiment with stuff?
I think so. I need to go. I think
you get 100 credits every time you renew your subscription.
That could be. I need to look into that.
Play with it. Yeah,
like cloud credits or something.
Yes,
I think is what they call it.
I would like to start getting into this kind of stuff more, like generative design, and like I want to find ways to make things and or design things that nobody else can do or does do. Which is one of the reasons why I really want to look into like end topology. Because like one of the things they said is like, yes, you could machine the parts that it makes, and like you can set the mode, like you can set modes so that they are machinable, but literally nobody does it. Like they only use them for 3D printing, and it's like, well, I've got a 4th axis. I bet I could do some pretty cool stuff with it.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much cool AI stuff coming out right now. Have you heard of Dahlia E2?
Yep.
Yeah, we've been playing around with that some. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
I tried to get it to design a knife for me.
Yeah,
it didn't go very well.
I've shown a couple people that, and what was it? There was a group of film guys that were just showing off how they got an extension for an AI photo generation thing, and they could upload images into it and have it modify them, and it was pretty cool how it all came out. I forget.
Yeah,
Corridor Crew. Yes, yeah,
Corridor Crew. I love Corridor Crew.
Yeah, they just had a really cool AI video, like AI generated images. Did you watch that one?
I have seen them all, so yes.
That one was super cool.
Okay, random website says Entopology is about $7,500 a year, which is actually not as expensive as I was thinking it was. I thought it was like $50,000.
Yeah.
That's still really expensive. But if you could do things that nobody else can do, I don't know. I just like the idea of, do things that other people can't.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. Let's see here.
Whoa. Sorry, something just made a noise in my computer. This is a fascinating podcast as we both open internet browsers and look at software.
We've distracted ourselves now. Now we're going down the internet rabbit hole.
We should probably wrap it up here.
Yeah, we're getting way off topic.
Do you want to take us out?
Sure. Thanks for hanging on as we go from on topic to way off in the weeds. But for all of you that have held on to the end, thank you. And this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity and AJ with Design the Everything. Signing off.
Bye.